Hello, my name is Voya and welcome to my deep guide. Well, here it is finally after spending a little over a month, around a month's time, with the new SVD screen. As you can see it right here in the background, it's mounted on a VESA arm. So, let me just move out of the frame so that you can actually see it as well. Today we're going to be talking about the new SVD reflective LCD panel. So this is their second iteration, and they've improved upon certain designs. Certain things have not been that much improved. So let's take a slightly more in-depth look at the new SVD reflective LCD panel. Now, before we do, two things. First, just a note that this is not going to be as in-depth of a review as I did it the first time. Simple fact of it is I'm not going to be performing all of the tests all over the place because it's middle of winter. The reflective panels are, well, it's not middle of winter now, it's already March, April. Oh my God, it's already April. Okay, it's not middle of winter, but in Norway, we're still covered in snow and it's still dark and it's still So I don't have the nice lighting conditions that I had when I reviewed the original, the first SVD panel. The second reason is that this is ultimately the same screen, it's just, packaged in a different way and certain things have been slightly more tweaked, but essentially it's the same panel, just a little bit more practical. So there's no point in me repeating exactly all of the same tests, and if you're interested in reflective LCD technology more, I do invite you to watch the original SVD in-depth review, because you will get a lot of information that directly applies, exactly the same applies onto this panel as well. So for the sake of not repeating myself way too much, I wanted to actually take a slightly different approach with this panel and use it in a slightly different way and see the other side of usability, things that I couldn't do with the original panel and that I can do with this one, and what kind of results we get. So the idea is to combine both of those reviews so that you can get the optimal idea of what reflective LCD panels are capable of and what they are not capable of. I hope that makes sense. And the second thing I wanted to talk about is that if you do like my work and if you do want to support my deep guide, then I invite you to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and check out the mydeepguide.com/shop for the MDO. And what is MDO? Where MDO is a hyperlinked PDF file that can satisfy all of your professional or personal yearly, quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily organizing needs, including a diary, planner, and all of these sorts of things. It is compatible with most of the e-ink devices out there and also some of the regular tablets. And if you're interested to find out more, you can find a link in the description below for the playlist, MDO playlist, that contains a ton of information that I invite you to check out so that you can make an informed decision whether MDO is the right product for you or not. And now, let's check out the SVD monitor. So first of all, what is the new RLCD monitor from SVD? Well, it's a 32-inch reflective LCD monitor that is intended for indoor use primarily, but it can also be used outdoors or near windows, as reflective LCD technology benefits directly from the ambient light. Now, just a very short info on reflective LCD versus a regular LCD. Well, regular LCD panels or OLEDs, they all have a backlight. Now, the backlight can be behind the panel or to the sides of the panel, but either way, you have intense light that either flickers or glows all of the time. time. Reflective LCD goes away with any form of backlight, and what it instead it has is a highly reflective panel behind the LCD cells. So basically the idea is that a transmittance of the light is high, so it lets a lot of light go through the panel itself, then bounce back from that reflective panel and then illuminate the cells that way. What that gives you is, first of all, a much healthier setup for a screen, because you don't have something that's glaring on you. You don't have the glaring LED blue light. You don't have flickering, because some of the screens and some of the black backlights have flickering. You have none of those things. So what you do get is something rather unique, because it's a reflective display. It depends entirely on the environmental light. And what you get is a display that actually fits and mimics the lighting conditions of your environment. Now that can be a good thing or a bad thing, because, as you've guessed it, if you don't have enough light, this monitor is not going to be good for you, right? It's not going to work for you because it depends on the light. Again, I urge you to watch the original SVD, the first reflective monitor that they had, my review of that. Very comprehensive, and a lot of these things are explained in detail there. And another very important advantage of the reflective LCD technology is the power consumption and weight. Because you don't have the backlight that's working so much, you cut down on weight, and you cut down dramatically on the actual power consumption. But that's the short kind of summary of what reflective LCD technology is. So that's what the RE monitor is. So reflective LCD panel, 32-inch in size, resolution is 1080p, so 1920 by 1080. It has 16.7 million color gamut. It is not HDR compatible, and it runs at the frequency of 60 Hertz. Availability is now. It's available at their website, and it costs quite a lot. Current price for the new screen is $1,749 US, and that says that it's $200 off MSRP. So $1,750 US dollars. That's a lot for a 32-inch screen. So it's really important that you make a good decision and a good judgment whether or not this technology is right for you, because it will not be right for everybody. But for those that suffer from migraines, have issues, physically cannot use backlit screens, then this is a game changer. So I've already mentioned the basic specifications of the panel. So 32-inch, 1080p, 60 Hertz, non-HDR, no front light, no backlight, no nothing like that. So what are the new things between the new panel and the new RE display and the old RE display? Well, there are several things, and the most notable one is that now we have a VESA mounting built into the design itself, which was not the case in the original one. The second thing is that we have a new stand. So it's not a kickstand anymore, it's a stand. It's a fairly limiting stand, more on that a little bit later, but yes, it does have a stand now. It has 2 HDMI inputs, no longer just one. It has audio output, so it's a little bit more integrated into a real-world use, something that a real-world indoor monitor, computer monitor actually needs. Now, let's talk a little bit about the design and the build quality of the new RE computer monitor from SVD. Well, it is undeniably a very beautiful piece of hardware. It is thin, it is sleek, it is very nicely built. The main panel is made out of metal, and it just feels really good. You have a very thin bezel on the side, and it just looks gorgeous. Now, when you turn the screen around, then things take a little bit more of a plasticky turn, and the back panel is a fairly cheap looking and cheap feeling plastic cover. The new OSD buttons are very cheap looking, and there's like a huge amount of open area around them, which is basically just allows you to see the electronics inside, and that's like a bunch of gaping holes that doesn't have a grill, doesn't have a mesh, doesn't have any dust protector in there. So that is an area where I believe that over time it will allow for quite a bit of dust to start settling into the device. Now, while we're talking about the OSD buttons, as far as the design of it goes, hardware design, the placement of the buttons, which button does what, is not good on this one. And why do I say that? Well, it's great that we have the options of the multiple options that we do have. So OSD panel has been improved quite a lot, but the physical placement and the design of which button is placed where and what it does is simply wrong, I think, in my opinion, because even after over a month of using the screen, I simply cannot get used to, and I can't learn. There's no intuitive way of understanding which button does what, and since they are in the back and you have to kind of operate them that way, you end up basically always either exiting or going to the opposite side or entering a menu that you don't want. Basically, I ended up doing always anything but the desired action that I wanted to do with the OSD. So it takes always a lot of conscious effort and struggle to navigate through the OSD menu, which is a shame because it's a much more expanded OSD menu, which offers a ton of control, which is a huge improvement over the past panel. That's a giant improvement that they're not actually mentioning on the site, but it's unlocked and it allows you tons of options. It's just kind of sad that the navigation is beyond confusing. So something to definitely keep your mind on. The new stand is not something that I'm a fan of. I was a fan of the previous kickstand. It allowed for a lot of flexibility and movement around. This new stand, while it looks good and it's metal and it's like all nice, it's super limiting on a display that requires flexibility so that you can position it and place it where you need it so that you can get optimal lighting conditions. My main gripe with it is that we're talking about a $1,750, so $1,750 screen, and you get a screen that doesn't have height, it's not height adjustable and it's not tiltable, it's just pivotable, right? So you have 15 degrees, I think, of pivot front to back, and maybe 5 degrees down. So, and no height adjustment. That's just really strange because for that price, I would expect a much more robust and professional type of a stand. This one, unfortunately, doesn't really deliver that. So basically, in any real world scenario, it's a good thing that there's a VESA mount, because that stand is so limiting that for majority of users, the use of the VESA mount in a custom VESA stand or whatever it may be is almost a guaranteed need. Talking about VESA mounting is now built in, and that is great. So happy about that. However, the VESA holes are placed in the back, and there's like a little bump that's there for the stand to actually be mounted on. So that means that the use of proper spacers for the VESA mount is an absolute must. What does that mean? You cannot directly place the VESA backplate onto the backplate of the device. You will break the plastic if you try and do that. So you absolutely have to use the correct spacers. However, the specifications of the correct spacers and the specifications of the screws that are used, not the VESA standard, but the length that is required, is not specified anywhere, nor are the spacers and the VESA screws supplied. For the price, for $1,750, and the fact that in order to use a VESA mount, you absolutely have to use VESA spacers and the correct length of the screw, I would expect those to have been supplied with the monitor. Incidentally, you can find the specifications of those in the description down below for those who are interested. Luckily, all of these negatives are basically just like a one-time thing. So yes, mounting it on VESA was extremely frustrating because I didn't have the screws of the correct length. I didn't have the spacers of the correct depth and things like that. So I couldn't just use the stuff that I had to go and find something. And if I had purchased this, I would have been properly pissed off. I mean, I was pissed off to begin with, and if I had paid $1,750 to own this screen, then I would have been really pissed off. However, that's a one-time thing, because you go there and, actually now you don't have to choose, you have the spacer and the screw specifications down there, so you can just go out and get them, and then you don't have a problem like I did. But still, it's an inconvenience that you have to run out, find the screws and wait for them, and they arrive and blah blah blah. But it's a one-time annoyance, because once you mount it and once you have all that out, well, you have it and that problem is gone. The plastic back, well, it's in the back. You're not going to look at it. You're not going to, interact with it. The only thing that's unfortunate is that you're going to be continually interacting with is that unfortunate layout of the OSD buttons, which you are going to interact with from time to time, and that is going to be a point of confusion. But the majority of the time, luckily, you will be in front of the screen and you will be enjoying the gloriousness of that thin bezel, the thin design, the wonderful picture, and all of that in front of it. So most of the time you are going to be actually enjoying the positives of the design and the build quality of the new RE computer monitor. Now let's talk about the screen. What an elegant segue. So first of all, let's talk about image quality. And image quality, again, everything here is going to have a giant asterisk, which is depending on the lighting conditions, because it's a reflective LCD panel. That's it. The main thing to kind of keep in mind here is the delicate balance between the image that you see and the reflections that you see. So stronger the light that you have, brighter the image it will be, and brighter the image, it needs to be brighter than the reflections. If you can get that type of an equilibrium, that the image strength is at the strength of the reflections or higher, you will enjoy and you will be able to get a maximum out of this panel. The moment that balance tips into the favor of reflections, this is where reflective LCD panels get into a bad category, and they are then not that usable. So that's something that you have to be very much aware of. So that's the giant asterisk, and that's something to keep in mind about everything that we're talking about here, right? So now let's focus on the image quality. And I think that the image quality is really nice when you have enough light and secondary light or direct external light shining on it. So this panel thrives in daytime conditions, obviously, and when you have that, the image quality, the colors and the contrast are all really nice. The default setup of the screen I wasn't a fan of, so I've adjusted the gamma a little bit, and some things you can adjust quite a lot of things to your liking. The only thing that I would advise against is that you do not adjust the brightness so that you try and brighten the panel, because that's just going to explode the whites. So just lay off the brightness, but use the contrast, use the gamma, use the color corrections and color profiles, and you will find something that suits your lighting conditions and your sensitivities best. Because I was very easily able to find a profile and a setup that just improved the overall contrast and image and the colors really dramatically, and just turned it into a much nicer experience. Reflectivity of the panel is better than the previous one, but it's still quite high. I have to believe that it is possible to dim down and make those reflections a little bit more diffuse. I understand that it has to do with the transmittance level. So the panel has to let light through, and it's not supposed to diffuse it, because if you let the light through, you want the light rays to go straight through the panel, right? But if they do, then you also have a light being bounced, which is the reflection, right? The matte panels have a diffuser in there, and what they do is when the light hits it, it kind of breaks the light ray of light into several different directions. So it just goes diffuses into several different directions, which means that the reflection itself also diffuses in several different directions, giving you a less focused reflected back image. So that's the physics of the light ray going in and stuff. So what probably happens if you use a matte panel is that diffusion of light that goes through the panel might have a negative effect on how bright the actual image of the monitor will be. So I get that, but there has to be some kind of a happy medium, something that's better than what we have right now, because the reflectivity is quite sharp and quite high still. Even though it's been improved from the previous one, this one is actually still quite high. And just one note, in my unboxing, the reflectivity was super high. That's because the protective plastic panel was still on. It just didn't have any indication that it was there. And then I was just contacted by SVD and saying like, hey, we kind of screwed up. We didn't put the indication that is there so that you can take it off. So just take it off. And once I did, of course, the reflectivity was much, much better. So just keep that in mind, that the reflectivity in the unboxing video is the plastic panel. So this, what you see in this video, is the actual reflectivity of this screen. One thing that you absolutely have to be aware of is that RLCDs or reflective LCDs have abysmal viewing angles, and that's just because of the physics of it. That's something called a Fresnel effect, and it has to do that closer you are to the 180 degrees towards your viewing surface, more you will see the reflections, and more you are perpendicular to it, less you will see reflections. Now, considering that the image that you see is a 100% reflected light, that means that the Fresnel effect basically takes full-on strength, and closer you are to the 180 degrees, less of an image you will see, up to a complete black point. When you're dead on 180 degrees or 178 degrees, you will not see anything from the side or from the top. Something to definitely be aware of. So this time, unlike the last time, I was able to mount this screen onto this movable VESA monitor arm, which was the whole point, because I wanted to place the screen across the window, as you can see outside. It's snowing again. Okay. Anyway, so I wanted to place the screen how I would place it in a room if I were to use a reflective LCD panel. And this is how I would place it, because my original placement is away from the window, and that's really, really unfavorable for a reflective LCD panel. And that's what you had examples of in the original video. So for that, you also can check that out. Now, in this case, I was able to see a real world use case scenario indoors. I've shown you in the original review that this panel works unlike anything else outside. In direct sunlight, it's an absolutely amazing piece of technology. There's nothing that comes even close to it. It's absolutely stunning. And it makes even, working on your computer on a large screen outdoors a real thing, or gaming, or doing whatever. It's beautiful. However, when you move it indoors, then there's a lot of things. Is there reflections? Is there this? Is there that? How do I place it? Where do I place it? Blah, blah, blah. This time, because of this mounting arm, I was able to spend a month with the screen and use it for things that I would use that screen for. And I've come to this real world use kind of categorization, and I want to just give you examples of what it's good for and what it's bad for in real world. So, what are reflective LCDs? This panel specifically are a computer monitor. What is it good for in a real world? Well, it's really good for all office type of tasks, meaning typing, reading, so Word documents, presentations, Excel, browsing, absolutely awesome for browsing and reading, even coding. If you're not using a dark theme and you use a light theme, it's very nice. The colors are vivid and the performance is quite good. So it's very enjoyable to use it, and the 32-inch size is quite nice, so that it can give you a lot of real estate to work with, and you can actually even divide it into two verticals so that you can use a little bit more. So that screen real estate really does come into play. It's also very much acceptable for watching YouTube videos and things like that. Audio quality, forget about it. It's not. It's there, but it's really bad. You want to use another audio system. You know, it's just first aid, a step above a smartphone speaker. That's about it. So all of your social media and all of that kind of stuff you can do comfortably on this screen, provided that you have adequate lighting conditions, of course. So basically, anything and everything that doesn't rely on viewing angle and that doesn't require color uniformity. That second one is very important, because the color uniformity is something that is a weak point of reflective LCD panels, and this one included. SVD RE computer monitor has a tiny bit of a greenish tint to it, which is actually lovely when you game and when you watch movies and when you watch videos. It just feels a little bit matrixy and it feels good. However, it is not a color uniform display, and it is not meant to be. So that means that any and every task that relies on color uniformity, and that relies that no matter what your viewing angle is, where your sitting position is in relative to the screen, that you have exactly the same colors of pixels, if you have that need, this screen is not for you. If you don't have that need, then this screen is fine, because there will be slight deviations in illumination of the color pixels and things like that as you move your head around. We're talking about very slight things, but if your work depends on 100% accuracy, then this screen and this technology is not for that. So what does that mean? Well, that means that this screen is bad for image editing, digital painting of any type of sorts, rendering 3D images where you have to see the balance of shadows and the contrast and the light and the bounce light and all of these kind of things. Video editing where you are dependent on colors and you have to do color balancing and color correction, things like that. You really shouldn't do it on this panel, because it's basically anything that depends on color uniformity you shouldn't do on this panel, and it is actually not good for those things. As far as gaming goes in real world, it's hit and miss depending on the genre and what your needs are. There is definitely a perceivable lag with the screen. I did not measure it, but it is perceivable. How is it perceivable? Well, if you're playing any kind of first-person game. So for example, I was playing Cyberpunk, and it was very noticeable. So I would start controlling and then everything would start kind of moving. So it's not a small amount of lag. So for first-person shooters, there is enough of a lag for me to actually say no. It's a hard no on first-person shooter games, or any kind of first-person game, because you are disconnected from the character and it's just not an immersive experience. However, when you go into the other genres like strategies, building simulations, even racing simulations, because in a racing simulation you have the inertia and that kind of responsiveness is something that you as a player adapt to, that actually feels okay, and I liked it quite a bit. And the immersive experience of the screen and the colors and the contrast and everything was really good. So I wouldn't characterize this as a hard no on any games. Absolutely not. I think that it actually works for majority of games. It's a very nice screen and a very nice experience, provided that you understand that if you're playing reflex-based arcades, shooters, FPS games, and things like that, this monitor cannot do what you need it to do because it has too much latency. But for all other games that are slightly more chilled out, then you really don't have a problem, and then you can actually reap the benefits of the reflective LCD technology, which is a great combination. This last part, the real-world use, I wanted to kind of condense and combine it. You can look at it as a conclusion of sorts, and basically a very, very short conclusion and summary of the RESVD screen or computer monitor would be, provided that you can have it and use it in well-lit and adequately lit conditions for the reflective LCD technology, this is a brilliant display. As the previous one was awesome, this one is actually a lot better because it's a little bit more sleek and smooth. And for me, the main two differences are VESA mount, provided that you have the spacers and the screws, and the OSD menu functionality that has been improved way, way, way more, and it unlocks the potential of the reflective LCD panel that you have here, which was not the case in the previous one. So if you can do and provide the screen the conditions that it needs, it will reward you with something that you simply don't have in any other technology. Now, I've seen comments where people are saying, oh, you just DIY it, you just take a screen, pull it apart, unglue the back plate, and then stick on the reflective tape, and there you go, it works. No, it doesn't. It's not the same. So let's just not talk about that. It is not the same thing. There are many, many, far more different things that are happening on this panel in order for it to be able to utilize the reflective LCD technology. So, and the question of why it costs that much, well, the panel itself on wholesale, I think, is around $1,300 or something like that. This screen, the panel itself, is very, very expensive because it's not an ordinary screen. Now, for those who think like, well, I can just buy it and do it, well, you go ahead and do that. Then clearly this is not for you, so good luck with your endeavors. But for those who don't want to do that kind of stuff, this is a panel that does offer quite a lot. Yes, it's insanely expensive, but if you're looking for an alternative, it's going to make it possible for you to look at the screen and work with the screen migraine-free, seizures-free, issues-free, because we're mainly talking about people who have issues with the backlight, with the traditional LCD technology. Well, then this screen definitely delivers. As long as you're aware of the negatives that it has, which are, I've mentioned it. So the OSD panel, the stand is not that great, and the VESA is almost a guaranteed that you need it, and you need those spacers and screws. So yeah, it's not an ideal product, absolutely not, and I would have expected more for the price tag. You know, I really did. A better stand, VESA spacers and screws, and all of those things, it would have been a nicer overall experience. But they have improved upon all of the things. You have a longer power cable, you have 2 HDMIs now, you have audio out as well, you have speakers, better OSD menu, better panel, not better panel, it's the same panel, but slightly better reflectivity, thinner bezel around it, and it's just an overall more usable version of their already excellent reflective LCD computer monitor. I hope that you liked the video. If you did, please like and subscribe and ding the notification bell in the description below to get notified when new videos come out on my deep guide. Also, hit me in the comments down below. What are your thoughts? What do you think about this whole thing? And what your use case would be regarding a technology like this. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you in the next video. Bye!